Shalom to Professor Robert Wistrich.
Hello.
So we refer a lot to the term anti-Semitism as something in the history, of course, the Holocaust, and of course also in the generations before. And today we're talking about today's anti-Semitism. Does that really exist? Can you say that today there is actually something that can be referred to as a big, large phenomenon of anti-Semitism?
Anti-Semitism today, in my judgment, and after having written a book of 1,200 pages on the subject, which covers its entire history to the present day, I speak with some knowledge and confidence that this is well-founded. I believe that anti-Semitism has reached a scale and a volume, both in the number of incidents, in the gravity of the accusations and stigmatization, not to say demonization, of the Jewish people, including the State of Israel, but also diaspora Jewry. It has reached a level that we have not seen since World War II. In other words, we are living through what is potentially the most dangerous period for Jews in terms of the way they are perceived by others, by the nations of the world, by public opinion, in the mass media. We've reached a more dangerous period than at any time since the end of World War II and the establishment of Israel. And one of the reasons that people don't fully grasp the seriousness of the phenomenon is that when you say anti-Semitism, most people have a somewhat stereotypical, and I would say anachronistic view of what anti-Semitism is. They tend to identify it with a very simple and obvious images in their mind, like jackbooted Nazis, like cries of Sieg Heil, fascist demonstrations, calls to throw the Jews out of a particular country. Many of those types of anti-Semitism are much less visible today. Also, the softer variety of anti-Semitism that was very familiar before the Second World War, before the Holocaust, the sort of anti-Semitism which discriminated against Jews in housing, in jobs, in university positions. This, in the Western world, no longer exists. But that is because anti-Semitism has changed its form. It uses a different mode. It has different tones, different clothing, if you like. I argue in my book that in the last 40 years, the most dynamic form of anti-Semitism is the one that is transmitted through anti-Zionism and hatred of Israel. And there are a number of reasons for this. In many countries, to make openly anti-Jewish statements of the old traditional kind, really insulting Jews as individuals or as a religion or as a social group, could be punishable under the law. If you say the most diabolical things about Israel, nobody can bring you to book. There are no laws against that. It is a free-for-all, both in public, in print, on the internet. You can basically say anything about Israel and everything goes. So this has become the main vehicle both for outright anti-Semites and also for many people who are not even aware that when they say, for instance, that Israel is a Nazi state, or that Israel is committing genocide against the Palestinians, or that Israel is the ultimate expression of racism, or that there is an all-powerful Jewish lobby that works in favor of Israel, and any other number of things that we can read about even in mainstream media, they don't realize that this in fact is using a similar vocabulary and similar techniques of stigmatization that anti-Semitism has always relied upon.
But there is a difference. I mean, back then, all they could say, they of course couldn't say anything, was stop killing us, stop kicking us out of the stores. Today we're seeing claims. I mean, Israel says, no, this is what happened in Gaza. This is the reason why we're putting up blockades. There is a big difference.
First of all, the differences are not as great as people assume. Let's begin with the first example. One of the classic weapons of anti-Semites through the ages, and particularly in the modern times, has been the boycott. Economic boycotts against Jews were even the favorite weapon of anti-Semites of all kinds in Europe, in the United States, in any number of societies around the world, right up until the end of the Second World War. The boycott. Today we have the boycott against Israel. But that boycott works against Jews. It works first of all against the 5.34 million Jews who live in Israel, the largest single Jewish community in the world, along with the United States. And it works against Jews who are supportive of Israel, who find themselves ostracized, penalized, treated in a discriminatory fashion, abused, insulted, etc. Boycotts, by definition, are exclusionary, they're discriminatory. Israel is always singled out, and Jews who support it likewise. This is a clear continuity from the classic anti-Semitism that we've known in the past. Now, the fact that there is a concerted effort led by Arab states, but also by many other countries that support them, whether for religious reasons because they're Muslim countries or for other reasons, political, economic, there's a concerted effort that has never stopped since World War II and is still strong to excise, to remove Israel from the community of nations. It works on two levels. One is the efforts which have failed so far to overcome and wipe it out militarily. They have failed. They're the efforts through terrorism, repeated acts of terror, to intimidate and undermine the security of the country and make it no longer viable. That too failed. And now we have the third wave, which has more chance of succeeding and which has a certain momentum, which is to isolate and ostracize Israel within the international community. That is an attack on Jews everywhere. Let no Jew imagine, and there are unfortunately many who imagine this, and they are deceiving themselves, that because they may have this or that view on Israel's policies, or they may even be anti-Zionist themselves, that once this momentum really achieves its objectives, that they will be spared. Only a few will be spared, because these things have a dynamic of their own.
Now, after the Holocaust, there were of course many who talked about the threats that were ignored, all the dangers that no one really related to. People should have escaped from Europe. People should have done something earlier. Do you feel that today, God forbid, we are actually ignoring actual threats and dangers?
We're not relating seriously enough. Let's take, for instance, the most palpable, the most concrete threat to the existence of this country, of Israel today, namely the Iranian danger and the threat that comes from the proxies of Iran, which today are primarily Syria, Hezbollah and Hamas, who are on our northern and southern borders. So this is not some faraway threat. And we have the potential for disruption of Israeli Arab minority if it continues to be radicalized from within, which is in fact happening to some degree. So I don't feel that there is a sufficient awareness. While this is going on, we have professors in Israeli universities, we have many Jews in the diaspora who are academics, intellectuals, artists, who not only dissociate themselves from Israel, but actually add their own venom to the efforts to delegitimize and undermine the moral legitimacy of this country. Is that what one would call an adequate and effective, a rational form of dealing with a life-endangering threat? Then I ask myself, why is it that the Jewish street, to use that in a broad sense, in other words, ordinary Jews, are not campaigning more, organizing themselves, mobilizing in order to make the world aware of the nature of this challenge that we are facing to our existence, which has implications, of course, for the whole world. But if we don't stand up for ourselves, how can we expect others to become passionately involved? We proved it once in a generation earlier with a campaign for Soviet Jewry. We have to find something analogous, and we have to act in a kind of way that will catch not just the attention of people, but will make them stand up and think and choose and take sides. That is in our hands. We need allies to do that, but we should not be waiting for others to step into the breach.
Basically today people are maybe afraid to say this is again anti-Semitism, this is again against us the Jews. We're seeing the Prime Minister and all different official representatives saying, no, the Iranian threat is a global threat, it's not against the Jews. Are you saying maybe we should be saying, no, this is again anti-Semitism, this is against us, the Jews?
I think that in this matter, first of all, we could actually take a leaf out of the Palestinians' book. They have been repeating for decades now, without deviating ever from their own script, that they will never compromise on a whole series of issues which are of prime importance to them, such as the right of return, refugees, 67 borders, in the case of those who are willing to negotiate anything, right? Now, when I say take a leaf out of their book, not to copy their intransigence, but to stand up for what we believe because it's a just cause. Now, in the case of anti-Semitism, this is an outrage to human rights. And after the Holocaust, we are entitled, whatever other people will say about us bringing it up, we cannot and should not accept those kind of arguments. Regrettably, there are many Jews, and Israelis too, who are afraid, in the way that you indicated, to make this a particular issue. Because they fear people say, you're exaggerating, you're playing this as a card. This is what they say anyway. This is how many people in the outside world, and some of them even in the Israeli Academy, respond to the reality of anti-Semitism, which I think I've documented overwhelmingly. They respond to it by saying, oh, this is just a tactic to divert attention. There is no such thing. It's a diversion from what Israel is doing. But this is not true, and it can be proved. But we have to insist on it. We have to make the case. Israeli spokesmen have been very lax. What they satisfy themselves with taking every foreign visitor to Yad Vashem, a quick visit, and that's it. But actually, the problems of today, including the rabid incitement in neighboring countries in the Arab world, we don't talk about that. We don't protest about it. We keep it quiet. This is a huge mistake. We have claims. We have grievances. We have a right to demand that this stops. In the context of any peace agreement, if this does not stop, then that agreement will be meaningless.
Professor Robert Wistrich, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.